The rifle shot cracked through the dawn air like thunder, sending birds scattering from the canopy in panic. Marcus Thorne's heart jolted as he dropped to a crouch, his camera forgotten in his hands. That was close. Too close. The wildlife sanctuary's borders were supposed to be secure. Another shot echoed, followed by a bone-chilling roar of pain that made the hair on Marcus's neck stand up. He knew that sound. Rajah. Without hesitation, Marcus abandoned the bird nest he'd been photographing and sprinted through the underbrush, following the sounds of distress. His boots pounded against the earth as branches whipped across his face. Sweat beaded on his forehead, despite the morning chill. Marcus was no stranger to the Bengal Tiger Conservation Sanctuary. After leaving his high-stress position at a prestigious photography agency, he had spent the past several years documenting the sanctuary's work, becoming something of an unofficial guardian to these endangered creatures. The staff tolerated his constant presence because his photos brought in donations and awareness. But now someone had breached the sanctuary's borders, and Rajah, the magnificent white Bengal tiger and the sanctuary's crown jewel, was in danger. Breaking through a dense patch of vegetation, Marcus skidded to a halt at the edge of a clearing. What he saw made his blood boil. Rajah, the majestic white tiger, was thrashing in agony, his powerful leg caught in a cruel steel trap. Blood matted his beautiful white fur, staining it crimson. Nearby, a man in camouflage clothing was raising his rifle, taking aim at the trapped animal. "Stop!" Marcus roared, lunging forward without thought for his safety. "Put the weapon down!" The poacher spun, startled by the sudden interruption. His weathered face twisted in anger as he redirected his aim toward Marcus. "This ain't your business, photographer," the man snarled, recognition flashing in his eyes. They had crossed paths before, during a confrontation at the sanctuary's border months earlier. Simon Wade, a notorious poacher, known for supplying exotic animal parts to black markets across Asia. Marcus raised his hands slowly, his mind racing. "The Rangers are right behind me, Wade. You're surrounded." It was a desperate bluff. The ranger station was at least 2 miles away, and his radio was in his jeep. But Marcus kept his gaze steady, not allowing even a flicker of uncertainty to show. Wade's eyes darted to the forest edges, searching for signs of the non-existent rangers. In that moment of distraction, Marcus lunged, tackling the man with all his strength. The rifle discharged harmlessly into the air as they crashed to the ground in a tangle of limbs. Despite being in excellent physical condition from years of hiking through rugged terrain, Marcus was no match for Wade's brute strength. The poacher's fist connected with Marcus's jaw, sending stars exploding across his vision. He tasted blood as he rolled away, scrambling to put distance between himself and the enraged hunter. "You've interfered for the last time," Wade spat, reaching for a hunting knife at his belt. The white tiger roared again, drawing both men's attention. Rajah was watching them with intelligent amber eyes, his massive body still straining against the trap. The distraction was all Marcus needed. He grabbed a fallen branch and swung it with all his might, connecting solidly with Wade's temple. The poacher crumpled to the ground, unconscious. Breathing heavily, Marcus quickly used Wade's own rope to bind the man's hands and feet. Only then did he turn his attention to Rajah. The white tiger regarded him warily, pain and fear evident in those intelligent eyes. Marcus had photographed Rajah dozens of times, had watched him grow from a cub into the magnificent creature he was now, but he had always maintained a respectful distance. Now, that distance had vanished. "Easy, boy," Marcus whispered, approaching slowly. "I'm going to help you." The trap was a vicious device, its steel teeth biting deeply into Rajah's leg. The tiger growled, a rumbling warning that stopped Marcus in his tracks. I know. This is going to hurt, but you need to trust me." As if understanding, Rajah went still, his amber eyes locked on Marcus. Moving with deliberate care, Marcus found the trap's release mechanism and prepared to spring it open. The moment would require perfect timing. The tiger would be in excruciating pain when the pressure released, and his reaction could be deadly. "On 3, Marcus murmured. 1, 2, 3. He pressed down hard on the release. The trap's jaws sprang open with a metallic clank, and Rajah let out a deafening roar. Marcus fell backward, expecting the tiger to lash out, but instead, Rajah pulled his injured leg free and collapsed, panting heavily. Blood flowed freely from the wound. Without treatment, infection would set in quickly. Marcus needed to get help, but he couldn't leave Rajah vulnerable, nor could he leave Wade unattended. As if answering his unspoken dilemma, the sound of an approaching vehicle reached his ears. The morning patrol had heard the gunshots. "Over here!" Marcus shouted, waving his arms as two rangers emerged from the tree line, rifles at the ready. Samira Khan, the sanctuary's head veterinarian, wasn't far behind, medical kit in hand. Her expression shifted from concern to shock as she took in the scene. The bound poacher, the injured white tiger, and Marcus standing between them, bloodied but unbowed. "What happened?" she demanded, already kneeling beside Rajah and assessing his injuries. "Wade was hunting inside the boundary. I heard the shots and found Rajah caught in this." Marcus kicked the now harmless trap. "I managed to overpower Wade, but Rajah needs medical attention immediately." Samira nodded, her capable hands already working to clean and temporarily bandage the tiger's wounds. "We need to transport him back to the medical facility. The wounds are deep, but if we can prevent infection, he should recover." As the rangers dealt with the still unconscious poacher, Marcus helped Samira prepare Rajah for transport. They worked in practice synchrony, having handled many wildlife emergencies together over the years. "That was incredibly stupid," Samira said quietly as they waited for the transport vehicle. "Wade could have killed you." "He would have killed Rajah," Marcus replied simply. Samira's dark eyes softened. "Yes, he would have." She placed a gentle hand on Marcus's arm. "Thank you for saving him, but please try not to make a habit of tackling armed poachers." A rumble of engines announced the arrival of the transport team. As they carefully loaded the sedated Rajah onto the specialized vehicle, Marcus felt a strange prickle on the back of his neck, the unmistakable sensation of being watched. He turned toward the dense forest edge, scanning the undergrowth. There, partially concealed in the shadows, he glimpsed several pairs of eyes reflecting the morning light. Female tigers, Rajah's pride. The sanctuary housed multiple tigers, but Rajah's group was distinctive, 5 females that were unusually bonded. They had been watching the entire time. One of the females, whom the staff had named Kira, stepped partially into the clearing, her intense gaze fixed on Marcus. There was something unnerving in that stare, something that seemed to transcend the natural barrier between human and wild animal. Then, as quickly as they had appeared, the tigers melted back into the forest. "Did you see that?" Marcus asked, turning to Samira. She was focused on securing Rajah for transport and hadn't noticed. "See what?" "The females. They were watching us." Samira glanced toward the now empty forest edge. "They're probably concerned about Rajah. The group dynamics among these tigers are fascinating, much more complex than we typically see in the wild." As they finished loading Rajah into the transport vehicle, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just occurred. The way Kira had looked at him seemed to carry a weight and understanding that defied explanation. Little did he know that this encounter would set in motion a chain of events that would change his life forever, challenging everything he thought he knew about these magnificent creatures and the sanctuary devoted to their protection. Back at the sanctuary's main compound, chaos erupted as news of the poaching attempt spread. Workers and researchers gathered around the medical facility, waiting for updates on Rajah's condition. The white tiger wasn't just a magnificent specimen. He had become the sanctuary's symbol, his rare coloration making him both a conservation triumph and a prime target for poachers. Marcus waited outside the medical building, his camera forgotten in his hands. His jaw throbbed where Wade had struck him, but he refused treatment until he knew Rajah would recover. Through the windows, he could see Samira and her team working intently, their faces masks of concentration as they treated the wounded tiger. William Thornton, the sanctuary's director, approached with a grim expression. His normally immaculate appearance was disheveled, as if he'd dressed in a hurry after receiving the news. "The Rangers have Wade in custody," he informed Marcus. "They're waiting for the authorities to arrive. This is the 3rd boundary breach this month." Marcus frowned. "Third? I only knew about the one last week near the east fence." William's expression tightened. "We've been keeping some incidents quiet to avoid alarming the staff and donors. But this, he gestured toward the medical facility, this can't be hidden. If word gets out that poachers can reach our tigers this easily, our reputation will be severely damaged. Shouldn't that be secondary to the fact that our security is failing? Marcus challenged. William's eyes narrowed. Don't presume to lecture me about priorities, Marcus. You may have become a fixture around here, but you're not staff. Your emotional attachment to these animals sometimes clouds your judgment. Before Marcus could retort, the medical facility door opened, and Samira emerged, pulling off her latex gloves. Both men turned to her expectantly. He'll live, she announced, exhaustion evident in her voice. The trap did significant damage to the muscle tissue, but thankfully no major arteries were severed. We've cleaned the wounds, administered antibiotics, and stitched what we could. The next 48 hours will be critical for preventing infection. Relief washed over Marcus. When can he be returned to his enclosure? Not for several weeks at minimum, Samira replied. He'll need to remain under observation, and we'll need to keep him immobilized until the initial healing is complete. William nodded. I want a full report on my desk by this evening, Dr. Khan. And Marcus, he turned to the photographer, while your actions were brave, they were also reckless. In the future, please alert our security team rather than confronting armed poachers yourself. With that, he strode away, already pulling out his phone to manage the inevitable fallout from the incident. He's worried about the sanctuary's funding, Samira explained softly once William was out of earshot. The board of directors has been threatening to cut our budget. Another security failure could be disastrous. Marcus sighed, running a hand through his hair. I understand that, but these increased poaching attempts aren't random, Samira. Someone is targeting this sanctuary specifically, and I want to know why. Samira gave him a searching look. What are you thinking? I'm thinking Wade isn't working alone. The equipment he was using was high-end, and he knew exactly where to find Rajah, despite the rotational schedule for releasing the tigers into different areas of the sanctuary. You think we have a leak, Samira stated flatly, her expression darkening. I think it's worth considering, Marcus replied cautiously, and I intend to find out for sure. Before Samira could respond, a commotion at the edge of the compound caught their attention. Several staff members were pointing toward the perimeter fence, their voices raised in alarm. Marcus jogged over, Samira close behind. What they saw left them speechless. Standing just outside the fence, in full view of the compound, were 5 female tigers, Rajah's pride. They stood in a perfect line, their postures unnaturally still, eyes focused on the medical facility where Rajah was recovering. What on earth? Samira whispered. They should be in the north quadrant, miles from here. They followed us, Marcus realized, remembering the eyes he'd seen in the forest. Somehow, they tracked the transport vehicle all the way back. The tigers remained motionless, their intense gaze fixed on the compound. It was as if they were standing vigil, a silent honor guard for their injured companion. One of the tigers, Kira, stepped forward, her eyes locking with Marcus's across the distance. There it was again, that unsettling intelligence, that spark of understanding that seemed impossible. She let out a low chuff, a sound tigers typically reserved for friendly greetings, then turned and melted back into the forest. One by one, the others followed. I've never seen anything like that, Samira said, her scientific mind clearly struggling to process what they'd just witnessed. That behavior is unprecedented. Marcus nodded slowly, a chill running down his spine despite the warm day. Something's happening here, Samira. Something we don't understand yet. As the crowd of onlookers dispersed, returning to their duties with excited chatter, Marcus remained at the fence, staring into the forest where the tigers had disappeared. The encounter had left him with a profound sense that he had glimpsed only the surface of a much deeper mystery, one that would soon draw him into a web of secrets and revelations that neither science nor logic could easily explain. And deep in the forest, 5 pairs of amber eyes watched and waited. The sanctuary was unusually quiet as darkness fell. Marcus sat alone on the porch of his small cabin, located on the sanctuary grounds through special arrangement with William. The events of the day weighed heavily on his mind as he reviewed the photographs he'd taken of Wade's equipment before the authorities had confiscated it. Something didn't add up, The trap was military grade, not the kind of equipment a lone poacher typically carried, and Wade's previous targets had been smaller, less protected reserves. Why risk breaking into the most secure tiger sanctuary in the region? A soft knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. Samira stood there holding a first aid kit and wearing a concerned expression. "You never came in for treatment," she said, gesturing to his bruised jaw. "It's nothing," Marcus replied, but he stepped aside to let her in. As she cleaned the cut on his face, Samira's professional demeanor slipped slightly. "The board is meeting tomorrow to discuss the security breach. William is worried they might use this as an excuse to cut funding." "Or replace him," Marcus added, wincing as she applied antiseptic. "That too. The pressure has been intense lately." She hesitated, then continued in a lower voice. "There's something else. The results from Rajah's blood work showed traces of an unusual compound." Marcus frowned. "Something Wade administered?" "No, that's just it. These markers have been in his system for weeks, maybe longer. I checked our previous samples, and they show increasing concentrations over time." "Someone's been drugging him? Why?" "I don't know. It doesn't appear harmful. It's more like a tracker of some kind. A biochemical marker that would make him easier to locate." She finished bandaging his face and stepped back. "I haven't told William yet. I wanted to be sure." Marcus processed this information. If someone wanted to track Rajah specifically, that would explain how Wade knew exactly where to find him. But who would have access to administer something like that, and why only Rajah? "I don't know," Marcus admitted, "but I intend to find out." After Samira left, Marcus found sleep elusive. Around midnight he decided to check on Rajah. The medical facility was quiet, with only a night attendant on duty who nodded at Marcus. His visits at odd hours were not unusual. Rajah was awake, his amber eyes following Marcus as he approached the large reinforced enclosure where the injured tiger was recovering. "Hey, big guy," Marcus said softly. "How are you feeling?" The white tiger made a low rumbling sound, not quite a growl, almost conversational. Marcus pulled up a chair and sat near the enclosure, careful to maintain a safe distance. For nearly an hour he simply talked to Rajah in a low, soothing voice, sharing his concerns about the sanctuary and his suspicions about Wade. "Someone set you up, and I'm going to find out who," he promised. As he finally rose to leave, he noticed something that made him freeze. On the observation monitor displaying the exterior of the building, 5 familiar shapes moved through the darkness. Rajah's pride had returned. Quickly checking that the night attendant was distracted with paperwork, Marcus slipped outside through a side door. The females were gathered at the edge of the clearing, just beyond the security lights. They watched him approach with unnerving focus. Kira, the apparent leader, took several steps forward, stopping about 20 feet from Marcus. In the moonlight, her stripes created patterns of silver and shadow across her muscular form. "What are you doing here?" Marcus whispered, though he knew the question was absurd. These were wild animals, not people, yet Kira's behavior suggested otherwise. She lowered her head, then deliberately turned to look at the forest before facing Marcus again. She repeated this motion, her intent unmistakable even to Marcus's human perception. She wanted him to follow. Every rational part of Marcus's mind screamed that this was madness. Following predators into a dark forest was suicidal, yet something deeper, more instinctual, told him this was important. "I must be losing my mind," he muttered, but he began walking slowly in the direction Kira indicated, maintaining a respectful distance. The tigers led him through the forest with deliberate care, often stopping to ensure he was still following. They moved like shadows through the undergrowth, silent and graceful despite their size. After about a mile, they reached a small clearing. The tigers stopped, and Kira looked meaningfully at something on the ground. As Marcus cautiously approached, he saw disturbed earth. Someone had been digging here recently. Using the flashlight on his phone, Marcus examined the area more carefully. The soil had been replaced, but not expertly. Something had been buried here, then unearthed. Small fragments of what looked like packaging material were scattered nearby. Marcus took photographs documenting everything. As he worked, the tigers watched silently, their patience unnatural. "What happened here?" he asked, not expecting an answer. Kira responded with a low chuff, then turned her attention to another path leading away from the clearing. Again, the intent was clear. There was more to see. Following this new direction, Marcus soon found himself at a small stream. Here, the tigers stopped again, this time focusing on the water itself. Marcus crouched near the bank, shining his light on the surface. Nothing seemed unusual until he noticed a faint, oily sheen. Collecting a water sample in an empty water bottle from his pocket, he made a mental note to have Samira analyze it. The tigers led him to one final location, a maintenance shed rarely used by the sanctuary staff, located in a remote corner of the property. The door showed signs of recent use, despite the structure being officially abandoned. Before Marcus could investigate further, the sound of an approaching vehicle reached them. The tigers melted into the forest immediately. Marcus barely had time to duck behind some bushes before headlights swept across the area. A jeep pulled up to the shed. In the dim light, Marcus could make out two figures. One was Oliver Reed, the sanctuary's maintenance supervisor. The other remained in the vehicle, unidentifiable. Oliver quickly entered the shed, emerged with a small package, and returned to the jeep. The entire exchange took less than a minute before the vehicle drove away. Marcus remained hidden until the sound of the engine faded completely. Only then did he approach the shed, finding the door unlocked. Inside, shelves held various containers of chemicals, some used for maintenance, others with unmarked labels. Taking photos of everything, Marcus noticed a logbook partially hidden beneath some supplies. The entries documented deliveries and distributions of what was coded simply as Supplement X to various locations throughout the sanctuary, including feeding stations used by Rajah and his pride. Marcus's heart raced as pieces began falling into place. Someone was experimenting on the tigers, marking them somehow. But why? And how did this connect to Wade's attempted poaching? As he carefully replaced everything and prepared to leave, he felt a presence behind him. Turning slowly, he found Kira watching him from the doorway, her expression almost evaluative. "You're trying to tell me something," Marcus whispered. "I just wish I understood what." In response, Kira made a soft sound, then retreated into the darkness. By the time Marcus exited the shed, all 5 tigers had vanished as silently as they had appeared. Dawn was breaking as Marcus returned to his cabin, his mind racing with questions. The tigers' behavior defied everything he knew about wild animals. They had deliberately shown him evidence, led him to discoveries he wouldn't have made otherwise. He spread his findings on the table, the photos, the water sample, notes about locations, individual pieces of a puzzle that still didn't form a coherent picture. One thing was clear. Something unethical was happening at the sanctuary, something that put Rajah and his pride at risk. And somehow, these magnificent creatures had chosen Marcus as their ally. As exhaustion finally overtook him, Marcus made a decision. He would confide in Samira, show her his discoveries. Her scientific expertise might make sense of what his instincts could only grasp at. But even as he drifted into uneasy sleep, a question lingered. If those he trusted at the sanctuary might be involved in whatever conspiracy was unfolding, who could he really trust? The answer, it seemed, had 4 paws and stripes. Morning arrived with a sense of urgency. Marcus carefully packed his evidence and headed straight to Samira's lab, hoping to catch her before the board meeting. When he arrived, he found her already analyzing blood samples, dark circles under her eyes suggesting she'd been there all night. "I was just about to call you," she said, looking up from her microscope. "The compound in Rajah's blood, I've identified it." "What is it?" Marcus asked, setting down his backpack. "It's a synthetic pheromone marker, combined with a mild psychotropic agent. Whoever created this was brilliant and dangerous. It doesn't just tag the tigers, it subtly alters their behavior." Marcus's mind raced. The female tigers, their unusual behavior could be explained by this drug. Exactly. But there's more. Samira pulled up a file on her computer. "I did some digging into similar compounds. The only comparable research was conducted by Neurofauna Labs, a private company that specializes in animal behavior modification." "For what purpose?" "Originally, military applications, but they've since branched into commercial interests." She took a deep breath. "Marcus, Neurofauna is owned by Thornton Industries." The revelation hit like a thunderbolt. William's family company? His father's company, technically, but yes. Marcus quickly shared his discoveries from the previous night: the disturbed earth, the water contamination, the maintenance shed with its suspicious supplies, and most importantly, Oliver Reed's late-night activities. Samira's expression grew increasingly troubled. "We need to take this to the authorities." "Not yet," Marcus cautioned. "We need more concrete evidence of the connection." He hesitated. "There's something else, something you might find hard to believe." He described how the tigers had led him to each discovery, their deliberate guidance through the forest. Rather than dismissing his account, Samira nodded slowly. The psychotropic agent could explain increased intelligence, but not this level of coordinated behavior. Unless... She turned back to her computer, typing rapidly. "I suspected the compound was familiar. It's similar to a theoretical formula I reviewed for a journal last year, designed to increase cross-species empathic response." "In English, please." "It creates a biochemical bridge between species, allowing animals to understand human intent more clearly, and possibly allowing humans who are repeatedly exposed to better understand animal behavior." "You're saying these tigers understand what we're saying, what we're thinking?" "Not exactly, but they might perceive intentions, emotions, patterns more clearly than unaffected tigers. And you, Marcus, you've spent more time with these tigers than anyone. You've been photographing them for years, observing them daily." "I've been exposed," Marcus realized. "That's why they chose me." The intercom buzzed, interrupting their conversation. "Dr. Khan, the board meeting begins in 15 minutes. Director Thornton requests your immediate presence." Samira grabbed her files. "We need more time. The board can't make any decisions without all the facts." "Go to the meeting," Marcus said. "Keep them talking. I'm going to find conclusive evidence." "How?" Marcus smiled grimly. "I'm going to follow the tigers." The sanctuary's north quadrant was officially closed for maintenance, the perfect cover for whatever operations were being conducted there. Marcus slipped through the service entrance using the access code he'd seen Oliver punch in the night before. He hadn't needed to find the tigers. They had found him. As he approached the boundary fence, all 5 females were waiting as if expecting him. Kira led the way, guiding him deeper into restricted territory. They moved with purpose toward a modern facility that didn't match the sanctuary's usual rustic architecture. The building was unmarked, with security cameras and keypad entry, far more sophisticated than necessary for a maintenance outpost. The tigers positioned themselves strategically around the building, creating what Marcus realized was a perimeter watch. Kira remained with him as he approached a window. Inside, Marcus could see a laboratory setup. Workers in white coats were processing samples while others monitored screens displaying what appeared to be tracking data. In the center of the lab, a large map of the sanctuary showed red dots, tagged tigers. Movement at the main entrance caught his attention. William Thornton emerged from the building, accompanied by a distinguished older man who bore a striking resemblance to him, his father, Harrison Thornton, CEO of Thornton Industries. Marcus ducked out of sight, straining to hear their conversation. "The board has suspended operations pending investigation," William was saying, his voice tense. "We need to accelerate the final phase." "Impossible," the elder Thornton replied. "The formula requires more testing. The white tiger's resistance to the behavioral modifications proves we're not ready." "Rajah," Marcus whispered. The tiger hadn't been complying with whatever they were attempting. "We're out of time," William insisted. "The sanctuary's funding will be cut. If we don't move the subjects now, years of work will be lost." "Moving 5 adult tigers isn't like shipping laboratory rats, William. The risk is necessary. I've already arranged transport. Tonight." As they moved out of earshot, Marcus felt a chill. They were planning to take the tigers, all of Rajah's pride. But for what purpose? A low growl from Kira alerted him to approaching security. Marcus barely had time to slip into the underbrush before guards passed his hiding place. He needed to warn Samira, but his phone showed no signal. The building likely had a signal jammer. He would have to return to the main compound. As he turned to leave, Kira made a different sound, urgent, insistent. She wasn't leading him back, she was guiding him deeper into the restricted area. Trusting the tiger's instincts, Marcus followed until they reached a second building, smaller and more isolated than the first. Through its windows, he saw something that made his blood run cold. Transport cages, tranquilizer guns, and loading equipment. The transport William had mentioned was indeed happening tonight. But what caught Marcus's attention was a familiar figure supervising the preparations. Oliver Reed, working alongside none other than Simon Wade, the poacher who had supposedly been taken into custody. Marcus took photos with his camera's telephoto lens, documenting everything. The pieces were finally coming together. Wade's capture had been staged, a distraction while the real operation proceeded. Kira suddenly tensed, her ears flattening. Before Marcus could react, a voice spoke from behind him. "I was wondering when you'd find your way here." Marcus turned slowly to face William Thornton, who stood with two security guards, their weapons trained on him. "I have to admit, I'm impressed," William continued. "You've been more resourceful than we anticipated, though I suspect you had help." His gaze shifted to Kira, who had retreated a few yards but hadn't fled. The other females were nowhere to be seen. "What have you done to these tigers?" Marcus demanded. "We've evolved them," William replied. "My father's company has spent years developing ways to enhance animal intelligence, to create bonds between species that were previously impossible. Imagine the applications: animals that can understand complex commands, assist in disaster recovery, even communicate in rudimentary ways with humans. By drugging them against their will, planning to ship them off to some laboratory." William's expression hardened. "You see only the immediate ethical concerns, not the greater good. These tigers are the most successful subjects we've ever had. Their capacity for cooperative behavior, for understanding human intent, it's unprecedented. So the sanctuary was just a cover, a private testing ground? Initially, yes, but I've grown to care for these animals, Marcus. I don't want to see them harmed. The plan was always to release them once the formula was perfected." "Then why the rush to transport them now? Why involve someone like Wade?" William sighed. "Politics. My father is losing control of the company board. There are those who want to take the research in a more aggressive direction. Military applications, behavioral control on a larger scale. I've been trying to protect these tigers from that fate. By stealing them from a sanctuary dedicated to their protection, forgive me if I don't applaud your heroism." Before William could respond, a series of roars echoed through the forest. Not just from Kira, but from multiple directions. The other females had not abandoned them. The security guards looked nervous, their weapons wavering between Marcus and the surrounding forest. "The tigers have formed a bond with you," William observed. "The empathic bridge works both ways. They're protective." "Call off your guards," Marcus said quietly. "No one needs to get hurt here." William seemed to consider this, then nodded to the guards. "Lower your weapons." As they complied, movement from the direction of the main compound caught everyone's attention. Samira was approaching, accompanied by several rangers and, surprisingly, Harrison Thornton. "William," the elder Thornton called out, his voice stern, "this ends now." William's face contorted in confusion. "Father, what are you doing?" "Something I should have done long ago." Harrison turned to the rangers. "My son has been conducting unauthorized experiments on the sanctuary's tigers. You'll find all the evidence in that building." As the rangers moved to secure the area, Samira hurried to Marcus's side. "What happened?" Marcus asked, bewildered by this turn of events. "After you left, I showed the board what we'd discovered," Samira explained. "Mr. Thornton was present as a major donor. When he saw the chemical analysis, he recognized it immediately and was horrified." Harrison approached them, his expression grave. "The research was meant to help endangered species better adapt to changing environments, to increase their chances of survival. When I discovered William had taken it in a different direction, I immediately contacted the authorities." "You betrayed me." William's voice cracked. "Your own son." "No, William. You betrayed everything this sanctuary stands for." Harrison's voice softened slightly. "But you'll get help, not just punishment." As the rangers led William away, Harrison turned to Marcus. "I understand from Dr. Khan that you have a special connection with these tigers. They seem to trust you." Marcus glanced at Kira, who had maintained her distance but remained watchful. "It's not me they trust, Mr. Thornton. They're intelligent enough to recognize who's trying to help them and who's trying to exploit them. 3 months later, Marcus stood at the edge of a large enclosure, camera in hand. Inside, Rajah was moving with only a slight limp, a remarkable recovery from his injuries. The white tiger approached the fence, regarding Marcus with those intelligent amber eyes. "He looks good," Samira said, joining Marcus at the observation point. "We've eliminated all traces of the compound from his system, as well as from the females." After William's arrest, the full extent of the operation had come to light. The supplement X had been added to the tiger's food for years, gradually increasing their cognitive abilities while making them more susceptible to tracking. Wade's role had been to stage a poaching attempt as cover for relocating Rajah, who had begun showing resistance to the behavioral modifications. Harrison Thornton had made amends by establishing a substantial endowment for the sanctuary, ensuring its financial security for decades to come. He had also dismantled the behavioral modification research, turning Neurofauna's resources toward legitimate conservation efforts. "Do you think they'll change?" Marcus asked, watching as the 5 females lounged in the afternoon sun near Rajah. "Now that the drug is out of their system?" Samira considered this. "The neurological changes appear permanent. They may not be as receptive to human intent as before, but their enhanced cognition seems stable. They're still the same tigers, just free to be themselves without chemical influence." As if hearing her assessment, Kira approached the fence. She regarded Marcus for a long moment, then made the familiar chuffing sound, a greeting between friends. "I've been offered a position as the sanctuary's head of security," Marcus said, not taking his eyes off the tiger. "After everything that happened, they want someone who puts the animals first." "Are you going to take it?" "I think so. These tigers changed my life, saved it, really." He smiled. "The least I can do is return the favor." Kira watched them a moment longer, then turned and padded back to join her pride. Her message delivered, her purpose fulfilled. In the golden afternoon light, Marcus took one last photograph of the reunited group. Rajah surrounded by his 5 guardians. The image would later become the centerpiece of his award-winning exhibition, Sanctuary, the Wisdom of Tigers. But more than fame or recognition, what Marcus treasured was the privilege of witnessing something extraordinary, the moment when humankind's arrogance had been humbled by the ancient wisdom of these magnificent creatures. As he and Samira walked back toward the main compound, now under new management, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought him here. From a simple wildlife photographer to someone who had glimpsed the profound intelligence of another species and had been changed by it forever. Behind them, Rajah's roar echoed through the sanctuary, not a sound of distress or domination, but a declaration. This was his territory, his family, his pride, and they were finally, truly free. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the world of captivating stories. I trust you found today's narrative as engaging as I did. If you enjoyed this exploration into fascinating and compelling narratives, kindly indicate your appreciation by liking this video. Are you watching on mobile? Show your appreciation with a double tap for hype. For more captivating stories and journeys into the heart of compelling storytelling, please subscribe to the channel and activate notifications so you don't miss a single upload. Your thoughts and interpretations are most welcome. Please share your perspectives on today's story in the comments below. And if you believe others would find this content engaging, please consider sharing the video with your network. Until our next journey into the world of captivating tales, I bid you farewell.